Okay. So we're talking about document 32, Common Sense by Thomas Paine. Let's start off with the source. What is the source? Kind of just said it. Go ahead.
Common sense. Wait.
Common Sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said Thomas Edison. I was like, where did you get Thomas Edison from?
No. It's like, yeah, common sense. And you looked at me, I was like, wait.
Well, I swear I heard Thomas Edison. That's why I was like, what? Okay, common sense. What is common sense?
So,
A pamphlet.
yeah.
Pamphlets. Right. Pamphlets. And then, of course, that pamphlet was later reworked into a book. And we all know Common Sense. All right, who wrote Common Sense?
Thomas Paine.
Thomas Paine. And what is, or who is Thomas Paine?
An immigrant from England.
Immigrant, okay. What else?
He's obviously once. He's a writer. Because he'd been writing before.
So academic scholar.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what is Common Sense about? What is the main topic of this argument? I know there's a lot of main points and ideas in this, but what is like the main idea you can gather from this?
I'd say the main idea is freedom,
Okay.
in a sense.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. But I feel like in this instance, freedom is too broad. Narrowed it down just a bit. How would you narrow that down?
Separation from the British government. The colonies' separation from.
There you go. Colonies separating from Great Britain. Okay, that's terrible. And GB stands for Great Britain. Okay, that's actually terrible. Okay, when was this document written?
1776.
1776. Kind of go into the historical context a little bit. What else happened in 1776?
Declaration of Independence.
AKA the American Revolution.
Yeah.
AM Rev stands for American Revolution. Alright, where was this taking place?
Philadelphia.
Philly. Philly stands for Philadelphia. Alright, I just do that for the video to make sure so they know what I'm talking about. Alright, historical context. We already mentioned the American Revolution, right? And also from the other documents from Monday, right? We can tie back to this idea of liberty and pursuing liberty, right? And then we can also go, so what Brianna said for the topic, right? Colonists wanting to separate from Great Britain. How did that all come to be, right? We have the different acts, the Stamp Act, the Townsend Act, the Quartering Act, the Sugar Act, right? All these impositions made on to the colonists by Great Britain, right? Great Britain wanted to pressure taxes on them, wanted to rebuild their economy from the 7 Years' War, like we mentioned in the last class. So we're seeing how Britain is sort of affecting the daily life of a colonist and how the colonists are reacting to it, right? We're getting this American Revolution, right? And so Thomas Paine is sort of the big proponent of this separation, this idea of separation from Great Britain. He came over to the Americas just to promote this idea, right? And kind of going into the audience of it, who is he writing to, right? What is the purpose of him writing this? And he kind of mentions it in the document a little bit.
I'd say to get to more the Americans that don't really care about politics that much, more to broaden it.
In a sense, yes. Anybody else want to add anything? Okay, so going off what you said, right? And sort of, he wrote this to reach to the ordinary reader, right? He didn't want to write this just to the no elders and like nobles of British politics, right? Or people in government. He didn't want to write to them. He wanted to write to the average day people, the everyday Joe, the me and you, right? So the audience is the ordinary reader, right? And this turned out to be one of the most successful sort of political activists sort of like literature during the time, right? It's sold millions of copies. it reached far and wide throughout the colonies because he wrote it in the sense of relating it back to the people, right? He talked about that section in the monarchy. He was like, everybody's equal. Why do we have a monarchy? You know, why is one person ahead of another person? What makes the difference just because, oh, they choose to be in power, right? How did they have that choice, right? He's talking about the usurpation of William the Conqueror, right? He just claimed the throne of England by himself, the history of William the Conqueror, right? So, I mean, you can actually add that to context, right? William the Conqueror. Sort of monarchy. Right, so adding that context a little bit, right? So he's talking about this idea of monarchies. He's talking about how like monarchies should be abolished, right? They have no legitimate power. He dates back to William the Conqueror stating the first instance of English monarchy, right? He's talking about, hey, he basically just came from up north, like Scandinavia area, and just boom, took power over England after he was fighting a bunch of wars. What gives him the right to do that? And so he leads that into saying, like, all right, now what gives them the right to dictate our lives, or the Americans' lives, right? Because he's, like you said, an immigrant, so he's not from the Americas, he's from Britain, but he's agreeing with them in the sense that their freedoms are being neglected upon, right? So trying to reach to that ordinary reader to then express this idea of separation, right? Tying it back to the topic, right? What is the main idea? It's that separation we saw a lot in that last section where he's talking about, who's the, let me move that. Right, the thoughts of the present state of American affairs, right? In that section is talking about what y'all should do in this instance. This is what I would suggest, things like that. All right, what lenses could we look at from this? And for Wade, I know you're new, so what a lens is sort of like a categorical topic of history, right? So like, how would you look at this from one of these main topics in history? And like a topic could be social, economical, political, geographical, right? Something that's historical in a sense. And then what you do with your lens is then like sort of look at sort of the argument or the topic from this perspective. And like, how could you question other things from like that perspective of this document, right?
Okay.
So what is a lens that could be of this document?
Geographical.
In what sense?
The sense of he's making the argument of those people over there. Why can they govern us when they're an ocean away? No?
I mean, in theory, yes, that's correct, right? I mean, that's exactly what's happening. But I would say that's more of a political thing, more than a geographical thing. Because it's dealing with the political nature of Britain to the colonies. Not geographic is more of like land, right?
Yeah.
We're not seeing Britain like moving everybody to America. In that instance, like colonization, geographical. This more political. Yeah.
I would say like philosophical, because he talks about how, like he talks about equality and how everyone has rights. So, and like how one person isn't above the other. So why are we acting like someone is?
Okay. What differentiates that, like that being philosophical to political? Because doesn't that have to deal with politics as well? So,
Both.
but like, why would you think it's philosophical and not political? Well, going off like what you said, you could argue that this is not directed toward legislation, so therefore it can't be political. So it's sort of his way of thought. So we can see philosophical that way, right? So philosophical. Philosophical, right? You can ask sort of like a question you get is like, should all men be equal, right? And in this instance, of course, we refer to men as everyone, even though it's really only talking about white men, right? White men in power should, is all men. Right, so this idea of like, should all men be equal, right? We can tie it back to the monarchy argument that he brings up in that earlier section of the document, right? William the Conqueror, he's illegitimate ruler. Why does he get to be that illegitimate ruler? Why can't we be a ruler? What is stopping us from doing that? Why do they have power? Why don't we have power? It's this idea of like a power balance, right? That he's trying to like give context to, then to make his argument, right? So that first couple sections is basically his content section of the document. That American Affairs part is then his argument, right? So now tying it into our argument, what is the argument? What is the argument Thomas Paine is trying to put forth with this idea of common sense? What is common sense in this instance?
Just leave the British Empire.
Right. So there's actually a quote that he included at the end, in the third to last paragraph towards the bottom, where he says, "For as Milton wisely expresses, never can true reconcilement grow where wounds of deadly hate have pierced so deep," right? So this idea of we can never get back with the British because of what they did to us. They taxed us to oblivion, right? They destroyed our liberties because they were looking for wealth, right? So this idea of they didn't treat us as equals, they looked at us as subordinates. So sort of, what did I put? I put, there could be no reconciliation with the mother country after all that she has done to its constituents, right? So kind of writing in shorthand a bit, right? Can't get back with right, can't get back with Britain after the breakup, right? So think about like you break up with your ex, you're not getting back with them, right? You don't want to get back with them. Why would you want to get back with them? They ruined your life. Why would you do it, right? And it's the same idea. That's why, like, when you think of the American Revolution, how many of you have heard, like, oh, the Declaration of Independence was the breakup letter to Britain, right? That same concept. Think of it as their relationship. You got a nasty ex. Get rid of them. Let's move on. How can we get better with ourselves, right? And we can see in the next document, document 33, we can see sort of like the opposition to sort of a Congress, but we can see like, hey, the Americans are now forming their own government. They're now doing their own thing. They're trying to distance themselves from Britain in whatever way they can. And we can see a lot of similarities in that. We can address that later. But so we get this idea, okay, boom, breakup. Should we be equal to them? We should be considered equal. You can tie it to the lens a bit philosophical. You can tie a little bit political too. Like, as I mentioned, they have their own Congress now. They're making their own laws, right? You can tie political in that sense if you want to include political. Sort of, it's a breakup letter, but yet it's to the ordinary people so they know that they're breaking up with Britain, right? It's not to the elites. It's not to the nobles. It's not to the elders, right? It's to the everyday person. Hey, this is what we should be doing. We should be breaking up with them. We shouldn't be staying with them, right? Tying it back sort of to the topic, right? We're separating this idea of separation from Britain, right? What he's trying to propose, right? Give context. Boom, American Revolution. We're distancing ourselves from the monarchies, right? So finding this interconnectivity between all the documents is what you're trying to want to do. So you can see how one thing, this topic sets up, boom, topic sets up argument, right? Argument then can be looked at from a lens. Lens can then can be tied into context, and you see this circle, right? Everything is connected. Also, add this, right? So everything is sort of like this big sort of circle, and that's what you want. You want every piece to tie in together. And so like once you find that, it's boom, 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 you understand history, you understand the context, you understand all the main ideas, you understand why he is writing this idea of common sense. Because to him, this is common sense to break up with them. To the everyday person, it may not be common sense, right?